this will happen to me where I'll get a random thought in my head that I just feel like I have to write down. Like that's a lot of the time how I write blog posts and stuff, is that I'll just get a phrase in my head and it sticks and I need to write it down. And I got this phrase stuck in my head that I wrote down that says, I know that wherever I go, I'm going to be okay because I have me. Wherever I go, I'm going to be okay because I have me. And a year ago or 6 months ago, I would have never said that. And that is a product of 2020. And I'm so grateful for it. This year has been a fucking mess. But I would never change a thing because I am who I am because of this year. That was my thought. Welcome back to Human to Human. I'm so excited that I am here. It's 2021, and today we're going to be talking about some 2020 reflections. Actually, I don't know if it's 2021. I might be releasing this. Oh yeah, okay, it's January 5th. I am obviously recording this in advance and wasn't sure what is coming out. So it is January 5th, it is 2021, and I'm going to be doing some 2020 reflections and then talking about my 2021 intentions in this episode. So, to kind of start off, I'm going to talk about my New Year's resolution I had going into 2020, and I was just on the phone with a friend and I was talking about this episode I wanted to record, and she was like, oh my God, I literally remember you saying that to me, saying what your 2020 resolution was, like your New Year's resolution. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And so funny that she like remembers me saying it. But so at the start of 2020, I said, this year, I want to do more things that make me uncomfortable because we can't grow in our comfort zone. Let's just take a moment. Boy, did I speak that into existence. 2020 has been the most ridiculous year ever. So much has been thrown my way, which I would never expect. I've done so many things that were so scary and so uncomfortable for me and just so different. And I seriously put myself out of my comfort zone, sometimes by choice, a lot of the times not by choice, in ways that I've literally never done before in my life. So that New Year's resolution, she really put that in place. She really spoke that into the universe. So wow, past Jess kind of felt like she knew what was happening in the future, something ridiculous like that. So something else that I actually saw when I was going through my notes, kind of thinking about what I wanted to talk about in this episode, I actually found this thing that I wrote, and I wish I actually looked at when I wrote this, but I wrote it, I think, a couple months ago. And I wrote that we can't move back into the past. We can't try to recreate what once was because it'll never be. It'll never look, feel, or be what it once was, and so we have to respect what it was then, what is now, and what will be later. And sometimes we have to teach ourselves again, show ourselves again, prove to ourselves again that the past isn't what it still is. It can't be, it won't be. And we have to be as we are now and not as we were then. And sometimes we need to learn that lesson over and over again. Whew. Yeah, so I think a lot of that came from a place of like thinking so much about how things used to be and what the normal life used to be and who I used to be, and, realizing that I can't, strive to be what I once was anymore because that's never gonna be. I just said be so many times, but like it even reminds me of, a past relationship I was in. My ex said to me like, things are so different than when we first started dating. You're so different. And I was like, I say this on a podcast episode that's going to come out a couple weeks after this one, and that's a good thing. I don't want to be who I used to be. And you know what? Despite losing so much because of the pandemic, life is never going to be the same normal as it was before, and I think it's really important to recognize that. And I think some of what I was writing there was recognizing whoever I used to be is not who I am now, and it's not supposed to, and I'm not supposed to be that person anymore. I'm supposed to be this new version of myself. So it's important not to get bogged down by that and focus on, going back to who I was before, because I've changed and learned so much, and I'm really grateful for how much I've changed and learned this year. And another quote I just wanted to talk about before I dive into just kind of how 2020 was for me as a whole and the lessons I learned. This is a quote from Brene Brown, also in one of my notes, I think. Don't know when or what state of mind I was in when I pulled this stuff and put them in my notes, but you know how notes are. Like, I saw a TikTok the other day that was like, people's notes be like baby names, your kill count or your kill list or whatever, the people you've slept with, grocery list, and then like random thoughts, and that's definitely mine. So this is a Brene Brown quote that says, "If learning's not uncomfortable, it's not really learning." And that is also so true. I think this year has been the year where I've learned the most and been the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my life. And I was actually chatting with a friend I hadn't talked to in a couple months the other day, and kind of was giving her the overview of Vancouver and the experience for me. And she was like, "That sounds really hard. Like, it sounds like the whole time it was just like super hard." And I was like, the whole time it was more just like super uncomfortable, because it was just such a different experience for me, and living somewhere so out of my norm and so far from the people that felt, safe and comfortable to me, that the whole time it was just like a series of different uncomfortable experiences, which is like not a bad thing. Like, I learned so much because of that thing. And so that, is something that's really huge and important to remember, that we're supposed to be growing and changing and learning as people, and we can't do that when we feel safe and comfortable, because I think it's important to feel safe even when you are growing and changing, but there are times when, we're gonna, feel like just so out of our element, and that's when we're gonna learn the most, I think. I think this is such a cool thing to do, is to write down everything you've done this year, all the things that feel big and feel like big things that you've accomplished, or things that have changed, or different experiences you've gone through, because I did this a couple weeks ago and it gave me a moment where I was like, holy shit, I am not giving myself enough credit for like all the different things I've experienced and the different things I've gone through, and like how much my life has changed in a year. Oh, it's so weird to think we're in a new year. I'm recording this just a couple weeks before the new year hits. It's like the end of December-ish, mid-December right now. And just thinking of who I was at the beginning of 2020 is just so drastically different than who I am now. And I feel really grateful for that. And I hope I continue to change I don't know if I hope I continue to change at such a rapid pace I feel like of what I did this year, but I am really excited, to keep learning and to keep growing. And I don't by any means feel like I know a lot, like, or just like, I don't by any means feel like, I don't know. I feel like this year has changed me, and I don't want to sit here and preach about anything. And I think that's the most important thing I want to kind of preface, is that, like, okay, I heard from someone else said that, like, it seems like I come on a podcast and I'm like, oh my God, I've learned all this stuff and I've moved, and I'm just like, I know everything. And I don't want it to seem like that, because I don't know everything by any means. I feel like I've learned a lot this year and grown a lot this year, and I'd like to think that everybody can say that to some degree, because the world just threw so much at us that we couldn't control and that we didn't expect. So just a little preface there. Moving on. I kind of want to just like list out some of the things that I did this year that were just really crazy and really impactful, and I really encourage you to sit down and do the same and write down all these different things that you kind of experienced. Obviously we went through a global pandemic is number one, or still going through a global pandemic is number one. For some reason it's at the end of my list, I think, because I was thinking of all the other like little things. The first thing is I went through a really big family change at the beginning of January. My dad had some health issues, and that completely shifted my family dynamic in a lot of ways, and was definitely something to adjust to. And then just a week after that, my dog also passed away. So it was really hard to juggle with a lot of very difficult emotions, basically right at the beginning, at the start of 2020. I started off 2020 saying, I'm going to do more things that make myself uncomfortable because I can't grow in my comfort zone. And my mom and I did the polar dip on January 1st, and we were like, boom, starting off on a good note. And then I think a week or two after that, I got ghosted for the first time, and that was really hard. And then the stuff happened with my family and then my dog, and I wasn't the closest to my dog and my family. My friends think it's really weird when they would come to my house and see my dog, because they're like, you never talk about your dog. Why? What? Like, how do you? I don't understand. I'm weird that way. But so, yeah, lots of changes like right off the bat in 2020, which was crazy. And then I kind of fell in love in a bit of a sense, or definitely fell for somebody in a very short period of time. And then I got my heart broken. And those were all like I feel like I've been in love before, but in a very different way than the time that I had this time. And I felt like it was the first time I was an adult and really experiencing this. But definitely the first time I got my heart broken. And then the pandemic hit. And so, like, we all know that shifted everybody's world. And at the beginning of 2020, I feel like I gained a best friend and got really close with the girl I was living with. And then I felt like that friendship totally shifted when the pandemic happened. And that was really hard. And I went through, what felt like a big loss in terms of feeling like I lost my apartment and the guy I really loved and my friend and all of these things. So there's just a whole whirlwind of experiences that I went through there. But then I started to learn like a new version of that friendship. I had 3 of good friends that I had turn into like my sisters, and that kind of happened over the course of quarantine up and then all the way to like when I was in Vancouver. I have had 3 friends that were all like, they were good, decently good friends of mine. One of them I actually barely talked to. One of them was like a best friend, one of them was like just a good friend, and then one of them was like an acquaintance. And all 3 of them just turned into people that just are my complete family, and that wouldn't have happened without the pandemic, and also wouldn't have happened without multiple breakups. Like 2 of them went through breakups, I went through a breakup. Like it was just a lot of broken hearts, which brings you closer to your girls, which I love. I also feel like I made a ton of mistakes, like just so many mistakes of different people that I let into my life, people that I seeked into my life, a lot of those senses of just like mistakes that I wouldn't even call them, like I would never take them back. I would never say I regret them because I learned so much from them. So that's something that I definitely experienced a lot this year, is making mistakes and learning from them and trial and error and figuring out what I like and what I don't like. Moving right along in the list, I moved like kind of a stupid amount of times in 2020. I moved 4 times. When 2020 started, I was living with my parents, but that's just because I was back for the Christmas break. So I moved back to my apartment in downtown Toronto. The pandemic hit. I moved back home with my parents. Then I moved to Vancouver, and then I moved back home with my parents. That is just like, there's so much to learn within moving that much in itself. I feel like it was a whirlwind. I'm so happy to stay in one place for the next while. For the first time in so long, I feel like I'm not worried about where I'm going next. And that's a really big thing for me to say, because I'm constantly like, what's next? What's next? Where am I moving? Where am I going to be living? What do I want to do? Blah, blah, blah. So all that moving around and like shifting of like what felt like home to me and where I felt most comfortable was really like taxing on like my mental health and just like my physical well-being and being able to fully completely relax somewhere and all of that. So I'm so happy to be home, and I've made my bedroom more into my own kind of space, and moving around that much is definitely super tiring. So that's a big thing that went on this year. I also really learned what home meant to me. I feel like because I moved around so much, it changed what felt like home and what felt comfortable to me. And I've actually learned that home isn't like a space. It isn't like in a lot of ways it is, but home is really wherever I am and that feeling inside of me and where I choose to make it. And it doesn't need to be stuck to a person, a location, a building, or a bedroom or something like that. So one of the most exciting things ever that happened in 2020 was starting this podcast. And I started it at the end of July of 2020 and released a total of 40 episodes in 2020, which is crazy to me. I posted twice a week, every single week from the end of July to the middle of December, and I did not expect to be that dedicated, I guess, and to keep it up that much. And it really was something that helped me get through kind of the challenges I faced when I moved to Vancouver. And I'm so happy with how far this thing has come. And it's crazy to think now I'm sitting in my bedroom talking to myself and everybody's home, and I don't love it, obviously, because I feel like a weirdo talking in my bedroom by myself, but I'm doing it and I'm happy about it. And this podcast has just been the biggest thing I've definitely done this year, and it has been the most exciting thing, the most fulfilling thing, and the thing that has helped me grow so much. So I'm so grateful for that. I also finally got a big girl bed. If you don't already know, I don't shut up about the fact that I have only had a single bed for my entire life. In my parents' home, I had a single bed. In my apartment in downtown Toronto, I had a single bed. In my place in Vancouver, I had a single bed. So when I was moving home, I was like, Mom, can I please have a double bed? And she is the best mom ever, and like bought it and had it set up for me by the time I got home. I didn't have to do anything. I was so lucky, and it has been a game changer. The novelty is not worn off. I am so happy about the space I have every day in that bed. What also happened this year is I tried out a lot of different jobs. I quit different jobs. I started different jobs. I went back to old jobs that I had. I've been learning a lot about what I really love to do. A huge thing that happened this year is I realized entrepreneurship is a very challenging thing, and I actually want to go to school to become a therapist. And I also realized that I can change my mind about that at any time, which I think I forgot that like we literally write our own stories and make up our own lives and can decide at any point what we want to do or change at any point what we want to do. But I really learned through my experience in Vancouver and working for different startup companies, but predominantly Pick My Brain, that I love structure and really thrive on structure. Today, it's actually funny to be saying that today. I like didn't have a structure to my day and laid in bed for the first 2 hours on TikTok, and it just like didn't bring me the best mindset and headspace, and I feel like I've been all over the place today. So that's something interesting that kind of goes along with that, is I really do well with structure and routine and a schedule. And so I learned a lot this year that that's something I want to strive for in my future. This year I also just wrote so much. I talked so much between my blog. I wrote so much on my blog, and I talked so much on the podcast. I talked so much to my friends and learned so much about myself. I cried so much. I also laughed a lot though too. I visited one of my best friends in Montreal. That's like a yearly thing I do, and I already got to do that this year, which was so nice. I had my best friends in the world come and visit me in Vancouver along with my mom. She counts as one of my best friends in the world, and that was something that was just amazing. My family dynamics changed. My relationships changed. My relationships have changed in so many senses. My relationship with my family has changed, with my friends and with boys and with myself, just so much. And a big part of that is therapy. I think that's the second thing. The first thing I'm most proud of this year is podcasting, but the second thing, actually the first most proud thing might actually be therapy, because that's what led me to this podcast, and that's what's led me to understanding myself so much better, and my values and my boundaries and what I want out of life, and how to handle stress in a more healthy way and ease up on putting so much pressure on myself, because I do struggle with that a lot. And I'm so grateful to my therapist and my parents for supporting me in my journey going to therapy. And I think that has been the biggest game changer for me for this year by far. And I know I will have my therapist, kind of as a go-to support system that I need whenever I need it for so many more years of my life, which I love. And so through that, I feel like this year I've found myself more than anything. And just a new understanding to who I am and what I care about and what are my priorities in life, which is really, really exciting. Okay, so I feel like the reflecting part of this episode is definitely the longest, like reflecting on 2020 and all that's happened. But I mean, what do you expect? So much happened in 2020. How could I not just have so much to say about it? And I started writing down like lessons I was learning when I was in Vancouver. But these are also just like lessons overall that I've learned this year, and I wanted to share them as well. So one of the biggest things was to just always decide things based on yourself and only yourself. Don't decide things based on other people. And this can contribute to so many different things. This can, like, not to say don't decide things based on a job, but like in my experience, that wasn't a great idea. But even deciding things based on a relationship or based on friends or based on, that sort of thing, I think it's really important to sit and be like, okay, if this factor wasn't there, would I still be wanting to do this? So for me, like, I moved to Vancouver because I was going to be working for my cousin, but I also love the mountains and want to experience what it's like to live there. But the experience I had working for my cousin was a lot different than what I expected. So it's important for me to realize that, like, I need to make sure I'm making decisions completely for myself and what's best for me, and not for an external factor that I can't really control. So that's something that was definitely a big thing I learned. Another thing I learned, that it's really important not to glorify people. And I think this is a hard thing not to do, because we see these people who, you know, for an example for me is people who have been podcasting for a long time, or have a big following, or people who've written books, or just like people we look up to. I think it's easy to glorify them and think they're these incredible humans that, you know, are perfect and like we could never live up to them. But like legit, like this is called human to human for a reason. We're all human. None of us are perfect. All of us fuck up. All of us have, you know, we're all a work in progress. And so I think it's important to remember not to put people on a pedestal. Something I actually thought of the other day is I was in the bath and I was like, we all poop. Like all of us take shits. Typically, I was going to say every day, but maybe not every day. But like we all poo. Even like Obama. Like, this is such a weird tangent to go on, but like that just kind of puts in perspective, we're all the same in a lot of ways, and there's no reason to assume someone's so much better than us, or assume, you know, they're this perfect individual when we're all just humans. None of us are better than each other, which is huge. And also that sometimes people just aren't all that you'd expect them to be. I think it's really important to like kind of like look at our expectations and like monitor them, which is really hard to do. But I think we can kind of assume a lot about who people are or how they show up in the world. But I think it's so important to just let people show up as they are and accept them for that. And it's so hard not to just like put expectations on people and not like assume they are a certain way, especially in terms of like different relationships, business relationships, personal relationships, romantic relationships. I think it's really easy to like paint a picture of who we want this person to be, but it's so important to, you know, let them just be who they are and accept them for that, and know that you're never going to know everything about someone, and allow yourself to have that like learning growth mindset of wanting to discover more about someone, because there's always so many layers to peel back. And another thing I learned is that don't assume who you'll get close to. I, you know, got close to a lot of people in the past year that I actually wouldn't have expected in a lot of ways, and I'm so grateful for the people I've gotten close to. And that just shows like this is something I love to emphasize, that I had this thought when I was in Vancouver. And I was actually going to go on a date with a guy, and my brain made up an entire scenario of what was already like going to happen before anything happened. And guess what? It was so off. It was so wrong. And I was on a walk and I finally thought of this point that was, whatever life is going to throw at us is so much more interesting than anything we could ever make up in our brains. So like, what's the point of trying to write? Like, we're storytellers. Our brain loves to tell stories and think up stories, and I am definitely someone who loves that. But it's important to be aware of it and stop it at a point, because whatever life is going to throw our way is going to be so much crazier than anything we'll make up in our head. So it's important not to get lost in the stories in our head, and allow ourselves to get lost in the stories of life and the stories that life is throwing our way. So that's really cool. And I'm just really grateful for just the people I've gotten really close with and who have really been my support system over the past year. I think when shit hits the fan, you seriously find out who's there for you. And that's an incredible opportunity to really get close to the people that are important. Another thing that I learned, I feel like I'm just like throwing lessons out my ass, but I think these all accumulated over a really long time. So it's kind of cool to like sit here and read all of them out and be like, wow, okay, accurate. Okay, wow. And like, these are things that are not easy to follow all the time. And it required so much uncomfortable circumstance to like realize all of this about myself. But it's so important to ask myself what I really want, and to roll with that, and to trust my instincts, trust my gut, and to know that what I want is based on me and not based on other people. And like a thing that contributes to that is like a friend asked me the other day, like, okay, so what's next for you? Like, where are you gonna live? And I was like, I'm living with my parents. I want to live with my parents. I want to live with my family. I love it here. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago. I wouldn't have said that at the beginning of 2020. But just knowing that where I'm at is best for me, and knowing that like it's okay. We're all at such different parts of our journey. We're not supposed to be in the same spot as someone else. Another thing that I touched on a little bit is that home is within me, and I can find moments and feelings of home wherever I go. And that is why I have a tattoo on my ribs that I got in Vancouver of a sliver of a moon. And the story of this was, I had a really hard time feeling safe and feeling comfortable and feeling at home there. And I really struggled with feeling comfortable and feeling like that's where I was meant to be. And I talked to my therapist a lot about it, and she encouraged me to think about moments when I felt at home instead of our brain looking for problems and looking for what's wrong. And I remember this one moment about midway through my time there, and I was by myself, and I was wearing like sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and I was just walking to the grocery store kind of later at night, and I was listening to music, and I had a moment where I went like, oh my God, like I'm okay. I feel okay, and I feel good, and I feel happy, and I feel comfortable with myself and who I am, and I feel like at home within myself. And it was a feeling that like came across my chest. And I looked up at the sky, and I saw a sliver in the moon, and was like, whoa, okay. And then it came again the next day. And I think I saw that sliver for like a few days in a row every time I kind of had a moment of feeling at home. And then it was gone. And then I didn't see the moon at all really for the rest of the time that I was there. And I just like felt that moment and felt so strongly about it. And I'd wanted to get a tattoo to represent home being within me more than being a location somewhere else. And so then I searched up a couple weeks later, I searched up what a half moon or like a sliver of a moon tattoo would look like. And I was like, oh, I'm sold. I love it. So that's why I got that, just to represent that home is within me, and I can find moments and feelings of home wherever I go. And that's focused on myself, which was really nice. Okay, transitioning into a kind of a funny lesson that's like not as deep, but my cousin Maxine taught me this, that men love when you ask for help. Like they love to just feel like, you know, not that they're like maybe needed as a part of that. And I don't know, I didn't really dive into like deep psychology behind this, but it's just interesting that like it's important to ask for help when we need it. And that's more something I took away from this, is that like we can get so afraid to like never want to ask for help and be independent. I definitely like am guilty of this with my ex relationship. Like he had a really hard time because like I could never say to him that I needed him. And I think a part of me never wants to feel like I need someone else. And I think like we all need each other though. That's the thing. Like we need like I don't even know. This is like a whole thing, but I love being independent and stuff. And I think I have issues asking for help, but even the smallest things, like when I would need to change my light bulbs or something in my house in Vancouver, I was just like having trouble, and I would be like, you know what? Like men like to be asked for help to a certain point. Obviously you don't want to over abuse that, but I would just like ask my roommate sometimes to help me out. And it was like just nice to be like, no, it's okay to ask for help. And people like to be asked for help. Like even when people ask me about the podcast and stuff, I love to help people with that stuff. So that's an interesting thing. And another thing I learned is that it's okay for people not to like me and not to like vibe with me. And it's okay for me to not like other people. In life, like we don't all mesh, and like and that's fine. Like even in terms of like therapists, I talked about this with my therapist. I'm like, not every therapist I'm going to meet I would connect with, and that's okay. So it's fine if not every person I meet I have this like crazy bond with, but I think we all have this like wanting to be liked so much that like it's so important for us to like be friends with people. And so I struggle with this. Like when I moved to Vancouver, my roommates I'd never met before, and I struggled with like, do they like me? Like why don't they want to be friends with me, or this or that? But it was more just like sometimes you just don't vibe with everyone you meet, and that's okay. And that's not even to say that I didn't vibe with my roommates, but it was just like I put so much pressure on myself to want to be friends with them. And it was a different dynamic than what I expected. I think that's why it's important to like monitor our expectations as well and let life flow how it's meant to. But just knowing that it's okay for not every person we meet to like love who we are. Like life would be overwhelming if we loved every person we met. Like, don't you think? So yeah. So I only have 3 more to go. feel like this was like so long. But something I learned moving really far away from home is that my problems just followed me, and we can't run away from our problems. And I think a really big thing I discovered about myself this year is at the beginning of the year, was going through a lot of shitty things, but I was like running from my emotions, and I didn't want to like sit with myself and be alone with myself, and I would use other people as cushions for my problems so I didn't have to like deal with them myself. And when I moved to Vancouver, like a lot of those sad feelings and emotions were still there, and not only were they there, but they were amplified because I was alone and I didn't have that support system that I usually have. And so I was like, oh, I thought moving away would like be this escape, but really like it was a settling in of these issues and having to really accept that they were really there, and we can't run away from our issues for so like we can only run for so long, really is what that means. But I really learned how to be with myself and be more comfortable with myself and like spend quality time with myself and enjoy it. And I'm really grateful for that. And that doesn't mean I haven't been lonely either. Fuck, I was so lonely so much of the time. But I also really enjoyed what it was like to just like hang out with myself, which was really, really, really important. And so another thing I learned is that I've learned what I want out of certain parts of life, or just like certain things that I really like living situation wise, even based on things I don't like and things I don't want. So a lot of things I experienced like living in a basement made me realize I can't live in a basement. Like I hate living in a basement. I need light. I need higher ceilings. There was mice in my house. Oh, this is something interesting too. There was live mice in my house. Like the first night I moved there was a live mouse and no one was home, and it like ran past me while I was going pee, and I like screamed and freaked out. And putting yourself in fucking crazy situations like that makes you realize like what you're capable of. Like being put in a place where you're pretty isolated, and I couldn't call my dad to get his help because he was asleep in Toronto time, made me, give myself a pat on the back, being like, girl, you dealt with those mice because you didn't have a fucking choice. And I think it's really good to put ourselves into situations like that where, we can really show ourselves what we're made of and what we're capable of. The last lesson I'm going to really touch on is patience. I am just terrible with patience, and I'm working on it. The biggest overall life scheme, I don't know if those words made sense. The biggest in the grand scheme of life, where patience is important for me is moving somewhere new and giving yourself time and patience to transition. I realized that once I was 3 months into living in Vancouver, I was like, oh, this is fine. I like it. I'm in the groove of it. But the first month and a half, 2 months, I was like, I hate this. I'm so uncomfortable all the time, and I don't feel at home, and I don't feel safe, and blah, 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 blah. But once that 3-month transition period was over, it was oh, this is just how life is. So I had a moment when I was there that I was like, okay, when I move home, I'm not allowed to decide anything about my future for 3 months. I have to wait until my 20th birthday was right around the 3-month mark. I was like, I can't decide anything about my future for 3 months because it takes me 3 months to fully adjust and live somewhere new and know what I'm like in that environment and how I function in that environment before I go up and uproot my life again. Because I did that kind of every 4 to 6 months this year. Okay, maybe not 4 to 6 months because that would not make sense that I moved 4 times in 1 year, but you know what I mean. But even patience in terms of friendships and allowing friendships to develop and relationships with boys and allowing it to unfold when it's meant to unfold. You don't want to be cuddling and hooking up with each other. Not you, I mean me. I don't want to be cuddling and hooking up right away, because getting to know someone and being patient with that process is so much more meaningful when you finally get to that stage. And I just feel it's so important to be patient overall in the grand scheme of life, because when I've been constantly worrying about what's next, I haven't been able to enjoy what's happening right now. And so then that kind of takes me into my 2021 intentions, is that I want to continue to work on my patience, and I want to really absorb and enjoy the current moment, because time goes by so fast and it'll be gone before I even know it. And one of the things I've realized too about living in the moment is that it's not about being like, okay, I'm going to live in the moment right now. It's putting my phone away. It's spending more time by myself or with my family or with my friends or people I love, and, putting away that to-do list and telling my shoulds and needs that I keep saying I should and have to do or whatever, to just shove it and just enjoy what's happening right in front of me. Okay, and then my last sort of 2021 intentions are just continuing to push myself, yes, to do things that make me uncomfortable so I can grow, but also having so much more grace with myself and really working on the amount of pressure I put on myself and making sure that, I am not constantly feeling like I need to work and get things done again and again and again, because I do overwork myself a lot of the time, and I work really hard and I have a good work ethic, but it's important for me to take a step back and allow myself to enjoy what I'm doing and recognize it and pat myself on the back for it. I just want to make sure that I'm not overworking myself to the point of burnout and exhaustion. And of course that happens, but being more aware of that and giving myself more grace with that is really important. And I really just want to focus on myself and what I want and what feels good for me and put myself first. I think we all should be putting ourselves first and our wants and our needs first before anything else, and staying really present in what feels best for me and what makes me happy and what fulfills me, and how I can continue to learn and grow and change as the course of this year continues. So yeah, it's really crazy to sit here and think about a whole new year being ahead and how much can change in one year. And it'll be really cool to be able to look back on the podcast and hear that growth and hear that change and feel those cringy moments of old beliefs maybe that I've had that have changed, and I'm sure I'll feel like that again in a year. And the last thing I wanted to touch upon is that just not everything you see on social media is a reality as well, and not everything you hear is the full story. So I think it's important to not get so caught up in the lives that everybody else is living and focus back on what feels good for you, what makes you happy, spending time with yourself, not always, bringing other people in to distract us. But I think it's important to always reach out and connect and spend quality time with friends and with family. I think a big thing, it's interesting. I was just talking about my love languages with a friend, and quality time is absolutely one of them. And it's important to make sure you're giving that love language to yourself and making sure I am spending quality time with myself and also with my family and my friends, and just making the most of the time we have and trying to enjoy it as much as we can and not getting too stressed, because a lot of the things I get stressed about, if I think about whatever I'm stressing about coming true, like not submitting an assignment on time or something like that, the world won't end. So yeah, those are my 2020 reflections and my 2021 intentions. And I encourage you to kind of think about some resolutions you have. My resolutions don't really revolve around like a fitness-based thing or a tangible thing and goal or something I can cross off a to-do list. It's more just like some thoughts that I have. I definitely want to keep being active, because being active makes me feel really good, and I want to keep writing as much as I can because I love writing. I really want to write a book soon. But yeah, so wow, I just encourage you to sit down and pat yourself on the back for the year you just went through and how you've come out of it so different than I'm sure how you've come into it. I can definitely say that for myself. I'm really grateful for this space that I've created and that people actually tune into. It really means a lot, and I'm really, really pumped about all the guests that are coming on this year and all the changes that have been made. And thank you for being along on this ride with me and seeing just the growth and change that 2020 has brought and growing alongside me. And I really am excited to continue doing it in 2021. I can't believe it's 2021. It's crazy. Happy fucking New Year. Make sure you subscribe to Human to Human. Follow me on Instagram at Jessica J. McDonald. Follow Human to Human Pod. Rate and review the show, please. And I have episodes coming out every Tuesday. So I will see you next week.